You know, a few years back when I was making one of the Comic Cat videos, someone actually mentioned how they felt like Blue Archive was becoming the second coming of Touhou because of how explosive the Doujin scene for it was at the time. And when I heard that, you know, while at the time it was getting really big and I thought it was really interesting how big it was getting, calling it the second coming of Touhou still felt a bit like an exaggeration to me. But after all these years have passed, seeing how things have developed and seeing how the developers themselves were talking about how initially when they developed the game they were hoping for it to blow up in Comic Cat as well, I feel like now is as good a time as any to actually talk about how big the Doujin scene for Blue Archive has gotten in Japan, because I'm starting to feel more and more like the person might have actually been a seer or something with how well they actually predicted how much it has grown. Because for those of you who have followed this channel for quite a while, you probably know that I'm someone who also follows the Doujin scene quite a fair bit. Like, I'm someone who goes to quite a lot of events, and I'm someone who in a way likes these events because of the fact that there's a lot more to see than one might expect. And part of why I'm making all of these videos about the Doujin scene in Japan is because I'm hoping that it gives people overseas an even broader view of what there is in the Doujin scene, that it's not just about all of the sissy adult content books and all of that, because while that is a part of it and a significant part of it in a way, just as significant as that, like for those of you who have been to Reitai, there's also a significantly big segment of people who are making all sorts of different things, because a large part of the philosophy of all of this is, well, people are making these things because it doesn't exist and they want it. It's just as simple as that for many of the creators out there within the space. They want a copy of a model of a gun of a character, they go make it themselves. They want accessories for Touhou, they go make it themselves. And you just see a lot of that going around as a result. And the scale of it was actually very massive, considering the fact that it actually went from not even being catalogued back in Comic Cat 102 to being the biggest series to be represented in Comic Cat and Comic Cat 103. And since then, it has basically just held the top position all of the way. And at that point, it was already kind of insane, the fact that this series basically just came out of nowhere and has held the position till this point. In fact, in the year 2025, in Comic Cat 107, it has actually exceeded Kankole's peak. So suffice to say, it has been growing at a rate that is, while not the biggest ever, is certainly surprisingly big as well. And since then, a lot more things have happened along the way, like in Cat getting its own series-specific event, sharing the space with all of the other events there, as well as some of the other middle-scale events where you start to see them popping up more on things like Comic 1 as well, all the way to the point where the event has gotten so big that the originally part of Cat segment of the event, which was called Sensei no Archive, has actually become its own separate event, and that separate event is basically pulling as many circles as the original Cat itself was for all of the series that used to be combined within it, and that everything basically includes stuff such as Uma Musume, Kankole Onima, and everything else combined. So suffice to say, it actually started to see a very big increase in scale. Now, needless to say, not all events went well. Some events eventually stopped being run as well. One of the events I talked about in the past, in fact, Sanctum Archive, has actually not been run this year, although I can kind of see that it's difficult for them to run it because the event actually runs on the same day as Blue Archive's anniversary. So I can imagine that for the organizers as well, who probably would want to be at the event, and for all the people, the circles who probably would want to be at the event, it's a lot harder to want to do both at the same time. And it's in that sense also kind of wild because of the fact that the anniversary event basically went from a one-day free entry thing in its second anniversary all the way till its fifth anniversary, where a single ticket is costing almost 7,000 yen. So yeah, it grew a lot bigger. The event has become 2 days now. It was 3 days last year, so it occupies the entire weekend and makes the event hard to run. And yeah, so unfortunately we do see some events that have fallen out of favor in the way, but it would seem that as those events have fallen out of favor and some of them may have been stopped as well, we do see even more events popping up even now. And especially as we have come in 2026, the number of Doujin events for Blue Archive within Japan overall is immense. Even within Tokyo, we have reached a point where there's basically at least a minimum of 2 events running every single month, excluding all of the official events, mind you. And so I figured I may as well introduce some of the events for those of you who might be interested and let you guys see what some of these events are like, because hell, there's gonna be a shit ton more of them coming in the future. So if you want to start planning, you know, I don't know how much longer this momentum would last to begin with, so if you want to plan for it, at least you know what you're in for. So the slightly bigger ones are basically Blue Market as well as Sensei no Archive, both of which I think I've made videos about before. You can go check those out here just for a little update for Sensei no Archive, because Blue Market has been largely the same. It is still part of a collaborative event with other series within a different event, so it is is largely running a lot like a very standard Doujin event. But for Sensei no Archive, it has split off basically and become its own thing since then. And since the initial running of the event, it has expanded quite a fair bit. The number of circles now is still around 400 plus. That remains the same. They still have the activity 4 coma thing where you can actually go in and like make your own little 4 comas on the spot with like little panels as well as character cutouts that they have. And they still give you the same reward for actually doing the thing, which is that they basically give you one of these larger like panels that you actually get if you actually participate within the thing itself. I think they have changed the panel since then, but I'll need to double check that again. But that's it with the event itself. Where it actually is being held has varied quite a fair bit, because the building where all of these events typically get held within Tokyo, the PIO building, it has been under renovation and it's only coming out of renovation I think next month. Well, I mean, it probably wouldn't make as much sense to you guys since I don't know when in the future you guys will be watching this, so it's gonna look really weird, but I think it's somewhere in April or May that the renovations are complete. So it has been held in a bunch of different places, including at the building closer to Haneda Airport, and for that building it's actually fairly massive. It's used for events such as M3 as well, although M3 occupies I think 3 halls, whereas the Blue Archive event only occupied one of the major halls. So the event itself is a little smaller than something as massive as M3, which is like a general music doujin event instead. But suffice to say, it was actually still fairly big. You actually had space for like cosplayers there. One thing that has changed since the very first running of the event is the fact that they now have the Tea Party Shosho, or the Tea Party Outlet Branch, I guess in English, where they have started to serve refreshments as well as actual cakes within the event itself. So that's actually pretty cool. You do see that in some of the other moderately sized events as well, but for many of the events, having an outright like mini store in there where you can get refreshments is still fairly rare, especially for doujin events, since most of them are run by fans for fans. So the fact that someone has actually gotten together to basically have all of this prepared is already something very interesting to me as well. And in terms of the stuff that people have started to sell at these events, I feel like it has gotten more and more like interesting, the scale to which they're actually creating their own things. Like there's actually a circle that recreates many of the guns within the game itself. So what they do is they actually 3D print a lot of these at a life-size scale instead, and they basically try to, in spite of the fact that they're 3D printing all of it, build all of this and print them such that they still have their moving parts. So like for some of the guns, for example, you can actually cock the receiver back as well. You can actually pull the trigger and it actually makes the clack sound, even though there isn't really anything that it can fire since it's 3D printed and all. And things like a removable mag and all of that, like they actually built all of it with as much accuracy to the original model as they can. And like just the fact that they're actually doing all of this is to me already pretty interesting. You have people making stuff like this signboard over here as well, which mind you, I actually do find it pretty cool, because while the little Shiba over here is actually painted in, all of this here is actually carved into the wood instead. So it uses that old like Japanese style of like wood carving, because apparently the circle that made this is actually a circle run by someone who does this for a living, apparently, as in like wood crafts in general. So you actually do get fairly good quality wood crafts there. I think the one for Plana, which I have a clip here for you guys, is actually a lot more up the alley for most people, and the fact that all of that is not painted on but carved into the wood as well is something that I find to be pretty interesting. There was yet another circle there making party games as well. I think I've shown some of the other ones before, but this one is more simple compared to some of the other ones, where I think there was one that was a bit like Cards Against Humanity, except that it has the funny pink hair honey one on it, and this one it has the funny British people on it. And apparently the game itself, it plays a lot like Uno but with special effects, I guess is how the guy explained it, where the game's base rule is that you kind of play it like Uno, in that you basically just play out cards in your hand with the numbers and colors on it, except that now it has the Blue Archive like refills on them instead. So for the most part, it's just all the 3 of them with like the different colored cards. Some of the art, or as you can see, a lot of it is reused for this specific piece as well. But aside from these, you also have basically the equivalent of like trap cards within this game. I think the way that he explained it working is that you basically are able to set down very specific cards as traps. So if a person plays a very specific card or color that you have basically declared initially, it would trigger a specific effect that they would not know what the effect is until it has triggered. So they kind of add in like a little bit more of that surprise or thrill element there. I mean, it's not something that's super complicated, but then again, I feel like it kind of works out for like a party game that you're trying to make as a thing that people can play casually at events or like just with their friends. Since something like this, it takes a lot less time to explain and like teach people as well, since part of the game is basically based off another pre-existing game, except that, you know, if you have friends who also like the same series, it kind of works out as a little more entertaining and on theme in a way. And speaking of card games, you actually had some someone who made just like an entire Hoshino like shiny collectible card set for a card game they made themselves, I think. Because like the thing is that it actually has like unique effects and things like that, wherein every single card in this thing is actually foiled. Like I am getting a little bit of like sensory overload just looking at all of this. And the thing is that it actually has like proper thought out effects. There are actually like a separate like set on the back with like the cost for you to basically play down this card like as a mana instead. Apparently he's selling random packs at the event as well, so I'm guessing these are meant to be part of like a playable card pack set for a collectible card game that they have made themselves. But yeah, suffice to say there are many people making many very different things at the events, not just books, although there are plenty of books as well, be it art books or just like people selling their own fanfic novels as well. There's a very huge variety at these events in general. Even with the books, not all of them are specifically adult oriented as well. Like you have cute slice of lifey comedy Yuka book as well, where it's a full proper like panel little comedy slice of life work that they have done multiple volumes for till this point. There's actually quite a few of these. Like this is the previous one as well. And the thing with these events is that they're actually pulling in quite a international crowd as well, both in terms of the visitors, because I saw a lot of people from Korea and China there as well, and in terms of the creators as well, because I actually did see the person who created these cards as well. I think he's from Taiwan if I'm not mistaken. He was actually there selling an entire set for the Millennium like school student pass as well. So suffice to say, you're seeing a lot of people make many different things that are both what you would think to be a conventional doujin and a lot of different things that aren't as well. And it's kind of interesting seeing all of this, because it really does feel like as the years have passed, as time has gone on, even with something like Sensei no Archive, which we have talked about maybe 1 or 2 years before, has actually grown to the point, while maybe not on the level of Touhou yet, you're starting to see more and more doujin works being produced that are starting to embody essence that Touhou has, whereas people really just making whatever they want to because of the fact that it doesn't exist and they just want to make it so that they can have it and share it with others. And that's part of the reason why, for those of you who didn't know, like doujin stuff at like Comic Cat and stuff, when you look at it and it looks ridiculously cheap, it's because of this. Not everybody there is actually there to try to make a profit, and a lot of people actually sell it at cost, because you know, if you don't, there's all the legal gray areas that people don't want to touch on as well. So like, yeah, we don't deal with that here. But suffice to say, there's a very big culture around people developing many forms of different talents, like quite literally outside of like just the standard like salaryman work people, and coming up and producing all sorts of different unique things at these events as well. And when it comes to the smaller events, and when I say small events, I really do mean small. Like most of these events only have like maybe 12 to 20 tables at an event, and the event hall itself is very small. There's an entire stack of flyers here at this point. Like I have been going around gathering them from all the different events. There's like at least 2 at minimum going on every single month. I think the first one that I actually caught notice of was the one that actually happened last year, because all of these flyers are for events that are upcoming this year or that have already passed. But the first one that I actually saw that caught my eye was obviously you know, because of you know, was the Ninjutsu Club one, which was, I think it might have actually been the first really small scale event that was going down to the level of focusing on a small number of characters, because this one obviously, since it's specifically for the Ninjutsu Club, there's only 3 characters and it's a event that was specifically for the 3 of them. It was held at the event space Lido, which for those of you Europeans out in the crowd, no, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, you can't actually buy cheap beer as well as your vegetables there. This is actually just the name of a very small space in Tokyo where many of these events are actually being held, and this was the first one that I actually noticed. This one actually happened on the 23rd of November, so just as we had entered winter, and if I recall, it was actually pretty cool that outside of the event as well, they were actually serving amazake, so you could actually warm up with some homemade amazake that they were brewing and serving outside the building itself. And the inside of the building, you basically just go into a fairly small basement, and down there you just had a circle set up. I found it to be fairly cozy, although specifically the Ninjutsu Club event, it felt like because it was the first and because it was seemed that it's not just that popular, the event was just so packed that it was a little tough walking around on the inside. That's it. All of these small scale events, it's not like the Touhou ones. To me, they are a lot more interesting to see because you really know what people are there for, and everybody knows that everybody there really likes the same very, very specific things about a much bigger thing. So it's much easier to connect with others because of the fact that it's a lot like with Touhou, right? You know that they don't just like Touhou, they like the same characters that you do, and so it makes it a lot easier to interact. Plus, they did actually set up some mini events events at the event itself, they actually had something akin to a shuriken shooting range, where you're basically trying to throw the mini mock shurikens at things on the stand and trying to knock them all down, and depending on how many you knock down, you would actually get a prize. Aside from that, they also had a lucky draw thing where they actually basically have the Chisenki, the spinning lottery wheel where you would just like spin it and you basically get something. And they actually gave out things from like the Blue Akaman, which is the Bikuriman, which is a chocolate wafer snack, which is not shitty like the Bandai Namco one. Bandai, I know you're trying to give us all diabetes. Can't fool me. But they had the Bikuriman, and that was, I think, near the tail end when the last of the stock was finally being like run out or getting close to expiry, so they managed to clear all of that. They also had posters for the event, like goods with some of the, specifically like this art, for example, over here, as well as the full event posters themselves, all of which they were being on sale for the official, not so like the event's own goods rather than the individual creator goods. And even for those events, in spite of how small scale they are, it was still really interesting to see how international the crowd there was, because for every single one of these events I've been to, I've seen a bunch of people from Korea and China down there as well who really like the characters, so all of that was actually really awesome. For example, the Korean artist who actually does this Michiru art, for those of you who have seen it online, this person was also actually down at the event. He was actually selling like a full goods set along with like a little like microfiber cloth as well, and the Doujin that actually comes inside of this. Like, it's actually pretty cool to see that they came all the way down for a event that had only 20 circles, and that basically, you know, was only there to cater to maybe like 50, maybe like 100 max visitors in total throughout the whole event. Like, you can really sense the dedication that he has to all of the ninjas in the world, his little autistic ninja army, it seems like. But yeah, especially for the Korean artists that come down, like, I do find it really cool, since there isn't really a way to get most of the stuff that they make in Japan, so whenever they do come down for these events, it's actually kind of fun just to be able to say hello to them, see them answer awkwardly sometimes because they don't know how best to respond as well. All of that overall makes it really cool. But yeah, the other interesting thing with the Ninjutsu Club event, and not only this one but for the other smaller events that I've been to, some of them at least, is that they actually split between a afternoon and an evening section. So the afternoon section runs first till like 2 p.m. There's a 2-hour break, and then from 4 p.m. till like the later evening would run the evening section, and they basically split it this way so that you can go in the afternoon and have a fully all ages like experience, and then the circles would rotate and then you get a different set of circles, so you can basically allow more creators to come in and join and participate in the event, while also safely separating some of the adult content to a separate part of the day, so that you can basically cater to everyone in that sense, which I thought was really cool, since it does feel like more and more events are at the very least trying this to some extent, where instead of having these circles completely mixed where you have adult and non-adult content mixed together, they kind of realize that not everybody wants to have all of that mixed in all the time, and so within the same event they kind of do have a slight separation between the two, in the sense that you can go to one section or the other. And it's especially useful because some people, especially the Touhou ones, do actually go to this event with their kids, and the longer all of these IPs run, the more you're starting to see that kind of thing where there is actually an entire generation where the parents are actually bringing their kids to all of these events. So having that separation actually is kind of convenient for all of these people going as a family as well. So, you know, it's kind of cool to see that with the really small events, they actually started to separate all of it into the morning and evening sections as well. But aside from the Ninjutsu Club one, there were actually quite a few more as well. I think that one you could call it like the vanguard in a sense, the advanced squad that actually like nin their way in, like true ninjas, and started in 2025, because all of the other events after that one basically all happened in 2026 instead. And like, this is where we start to get into the levels where it just feels a little wow, because right after the Ninjutsu Club event, which was the first attempt that any group for the Blue Archive community at least attempted to basically create a extremely small scale and more like specialized dedicated event, on the 2nd and 3rd of January you basically had two more that ran back to back during the end of year break within Japan, and this were actually both run for singular characters for the character specific birthdays. So for those of you big character sims out there, you probably know who I'm talking about already. But that's right, it's Hoshino and Hanako. It's kind of funny that both of them have pink hair as well. Like the coincidences of two pinks having their birthdays basically back to back is certainly a thing. But basically they ran both of the events for the character specifically. So it was like a character specific Doujin event and a wave to also celebrate the character's birthdays. So because of that, you kind of had a little altar, it's like with the Ninjutsu Club one as well, where both of these events basically had a small section dedicated to where you could just put your own stuff to basically let everybody together form an altar where all of the character goods can be placed to basically celebrate the character's birthday with a mini like celebratory character simping altar in a way. Both also had the little like lucky draw spinny wheel thing as well. So if you were lucky, you would actually be able to get some of the goods for the event itself, like some of the posters that they used to basically advertise the event and all of that from the lucky draw as well. If I recall, for the Hoshino one, they didn't really have any like mini activity going on, but there were more than enough circles, it seems like, because of her popularity to basically run most of the space for just circles alone. While for the Hanako one, it does seem like she may not have been as popular, but she was still popular enough for that to be a birthday event, don't get me wrong. But because of that, they actually had enough space to actually set up a little like cock rifle shooting range, which I also got to take part in. It was kind of fun. The way it was set up is such that the board in the middle with the giant chess set was actually a lot harder to knock down than everything else. Like you would probably have to shoot it like 4 to 5 times to actually knock it down, but you got a very big prize if you did. And then everything else you could just basically like try to shoot it, and all felt fairly fair in the sense that it wasn't set up or rigged to be difficult to knock down or anything. So sometimes you could actually get a shot that would just ricochet and hit 2 of it down at the same time. The whole thing was really fun either way. So that felt a little less Hanako specific. Maybe she makes you shoot a lot because you sissy backer, but for the most part, the activity itself, it just felt more like an overall like Japanese festival thing. So either way, it was still fun nonetheless. Also in February as well, I actually went down to 2 different events, both of which were spaced out quite a fair bit, and both of which were a bit bigger scale in the sense that they were more wide in terms of the types of like series and characters that you could create content for in it. But they basically were held like one at the start of the month, and the second one was all the way on the last day of February on the 28th. So barely scraping the line to actually get 2 in the month, but it actually managed to nonetheless. So the first of the 2 I went to was called Ao no Kiseki, or like Blue Miracle, and basically this event was fairly smallish in the sense that the hall it picked was really big compared to the number of circles that turned up. I think there were only 20 circles overall, and it was actually held in a fairly big hall. I don't know if it was so empty because of the sheer coincidence, but like this event basically took place on the 11th of February. If you actually went for the event, they actually gave you like this entry pass, which I thought was really cool because it comes with the whole lanyard and everything. So you would use this as your entry pass into the event, and they actually let you bring it back as well. So it's fairly high quality considering the fact that, you know, like the average event either doesn't give you a physical pass, they just give you the catalog, or they just give you a wristband. So this was actually really cool, and I thought like it was a nice thing to be able to bring home as well, to be honest, to show you guys. But yeah, in case anyone is wondering, this was the pass for the first Ao no Kiseki. So it has Mika and Yuka on it instead, since the event is meant to focus on multiple schools at once. So compared to the second one, which was Hoshino as well as Hina, it's a very different pair. I feel like Yuka, her booba does look a little bigger in this than usual, but I think that might just be my imagination. But yeah, the event only had 20 circles, but it actually took place on the first day of the Kyoto stamp rally. So it was one of those things where it felt like it might have been that empty because everybody was off running the stamp rally instead, and only those on the back here, so at the event itself. And yeah, on that day itself, it actually snowed as well because yeah, fuck my life. So this event actually took place in the middle of the Asakusa stamp rally, and I went down in the middle of the Asakusa stamp rally. So I went down to Asakusa, I did the entire stamp rally, I completed it by like 1 p.m. and then I ran all the way down to the convention center where they were having this event, which thankfully this one was actually taking place in the building in Hamamatsucho, so it actually made it a lot easier to just go down from Asakusa since the distance isn't all that far. So I actually went down in the middle because of the fact that for the stamp rally, which you'll see that in a different video, but basically I actually booked the cafe, and the cafe was at the end of the day when I was there at the start of the day for the event. So there was kind of this very big gap in the middle, and so I had nothing to do. I decided to go down to the Doujin event, and then after the event ended, I went down to the cafe itself. But yeah, overall, it was like, while it was really small, I actually did enjoy it a lot, precisely because of its size. The series and the characters represented were still varied enough. Like, you had like some people doing stuff like Hoshino, the people doing stuff like the Ninjutsu the Ninjutsu Research Club, if it's the English name. Like, I keep going back to the Ninjutsu Kenkyubu, but like, okay, focus. Ooh, focus. And yeah, it was like, I actually ended up like spending like a good like 2 hours plus talking to like 2 or 3 of the circles. So that was actually kind of fun in its own way. As small as it was, there was still a wide variety of goods, like people selling like acrylics, people who were selling doujins, as well as novels and the like. Like, it was designed to be a fairly normal-ish doujin event, but there were only 20 circles at the time. Although with how bad the weather was in the weekend, I can imagine that some may have just not turned up as well. But it seems like they are also running another cycle of these events, where with the Ao no Kiseki, they're actually running it in like multiple different like sets. So you have Ao no Kiseki, which is supposed to be the event that focuses more on like Gehenna and Abydos and Trinity. And then you had the second one, which happens in the later half of the year, called Ao no Harukaze, which basically focuses on all the other schools like your funny China Hina, as well as the Kyakkyako and the rest. So they basically split it between the two, where each one has their own like different character designs and all of that for the different events. So it's actually pretty cool, the number of different events they're trying to split it by. I don't know how many circles will actually be at the Ao no Harukaze, since that's the later event, and I feel like from what I see online, at least, the people who run this event, they don't seem to actually use Twitter at all to advertise the event. Like, it's purely just through like a website that they have and like posters that they hand out to people at other events. So they really don't seem to have a lot of marketing going on. So I don't know how many people will be going for it, but you know, if it works out and I actually have the time to fit it in, I'll probably like have the Ao no Harukaze part fit into this video here as well. This was followed by 2 slightly larger scale events that happened in February. In spite of the fact that the event has a Japanese name down here, I think this is like a place in Korea or something. It's called like Cheonggyecheon. I probably butchered that. My apologies. Don't send the protest trucks to my house, please. But in spite of the name, it actually didn't happen in Korea. This actually happened in Tokyo, in an area closer to Asakusa. The day of the event itself was a little rough due to the fact there was also a marathon running. So like, and I still want to complain about this. It has nothing to do with the video, but like, I could have cycled down to the event in like 15 minutes, but because of the fact that there was that stupid ass marathon that people had to stupid ass run around the middle of Tokyo instead of like in Saitama or something, I had to take the train and spend 200 yen to take 25 minutes to go to the same event. So that pissed me off a little. But the event itself was actually pretty fun. Compared to the other events I've talked about before, this one was actually a little bigger. One funny thing maybe kinda is the fact that the logo for the event, I don't know how visible it is here, but yeah, you can see on the Twitter as well, it's basically a funny kani, so that's a thing as well. And for the event, they also did give out this credit card looking thing, like the one for the Plana card as well. So that I thought that was pretty cool. Like, someone actually like went to recreate it with the little fake like actual credit card chip here as well. And if you flip it over, you actually have the pass for the event on the back here. So it's actually really cool that you have both the event poster, basically with the little like event number count here along with this. So I just find it really sick that all these events are just like actually producing this for the events like own organizing gifts as well. But yeah, it's certainly getting kind of impressive that they all are just like trying to run it all to this level, especially since they don't really advertise very hard that they have all of these things at the event. It's just that you kind of go there, you go to the door and you're like, oh, they actually have stuff like this. That's really cool. And it just kind of runs from there. But yeah, this one was fairly bigger than the character specific and the club specific events, because while those were all around maybe like 20 to 30 circles max, this one was at 100. Still about a quarter of something like Senaka, for example, but it was still a fairly big-ish event that happened before Senaka, in fact, because right after this, like a few weeks later, in the same month of March, I actually went down to the Seino archive as well, which is the one that we talked about before this. But comparatively, this event was also fairly normal-ish, I guess, in a way, since it's really just they rented a hall and they just like sold the goods that they had produced there. The biggest difference, I would say, is just that the size of the individual booths are slightly bigger, since the event was basically rented out to anticipate a smaller number of circles, but to basically dedicate more space to each circle so that they could have more space to basically like display their stuff. And it was actually pretty fun because like the smaller the events get, even if it's still like very varied, like with this one there wasn't a very specific theme for the characters, in spite of the fact that, you know, these two are on it. Like there were people who did the Ninjutsu Club like Doujin event. They were also there just having an entire booth to basically like advertise the future events, and they just set up a little like Ninjutsu Club display during the event. So they weren't really selling anything per se, they were just there to like just display all of that instead. And there were some circles that were fairly small as well. Like there was a guy who writes his own novels. They had a pretty like decked out circle like display, if anything, and it was actually pretty cool. He actually made a shikishi for me as well. 3 of them, if I may add, all 3 hand drawn with a pen, like quite literally with a pencil at the event itself. So that was all pretty cool. Like he basically, for those of you who have not been keeping up with Twitter, I guess I don't really mention it all that much, but nowadays when I do go to the Blue Archive specific Doujin events, I actually do like bring these 3 along. Like I put them in my little bag that has the wheels on it and push them around like that in a pram or something, so that like, you know, we can like live the weep dream at these events a lot more as well. So they actually had quite a few plushes. Like that's quite chaotic. I actually met them at the previous Kyoto event instead, and yeah, we kind of hit it off because they were selling, there were 2 of them basically. One of them was selling the novel, and the other friend was with him, helping him to set up the booth and help with the sales of stuff, and we were just having a lot of fun with the plushes and all. He was initially selling a Hikari novel and manga collab book, and he offered to or initially he was selling the Hikari shikishi specifically, and then he saw the 3 of them and he offered to draw a Izuna one as well, and that's how I also got this one. And then like we met at this event and he also gave me a Michiro one as well. Now we're just 1 away from completing the trio, and maybe I can get a Nozomi one at some point. But yeah, overall it was actually pretty fun. Like it just, because of how small the event is, all of these smaller events, you kind of have a lot of time to just stand around and just like chat and talk, and there's a lot of people just hanging out, with anything, more so than actually being there to rush and buy stuff. And yeah, I'm starting to enjoy these events more and more precisely because of that, because it's kind of fun when you're just like going to the event for like 3 to 4 hours and you're spending like 2 hours just standing there chilling and talking to people. Like it is certainly a very different way from spending an event, especially compared to the impression many of these events probably have, especially because of how busy and like rushed everything feels at Comic Cat, where you're like buying, going, and like running as many circles as you can. But yeah, it's part of why I'm starting to enjoy a lot of these smaller events more so than Comic Cat sometimes, because while sometimes you might have less to see individually, you kind of have more time to, you know, like they just take the load off and talk and chill with the creators themselves. So all of that I found to be really fun in this event. While it was still at about 100 plus circles, it was still a pretty fun way to do that. There was still quite a fair amount of variety of stuff to see, and yeah, overall I enjoyed it quite a fair bit. But yeah, the next other event I went to after that one was basically the Mission Completo, which was in spite of the cover and in spite of the fact that date here actually says that this is like on the 9th month of this year. This is actually the poster they gave out, or the flyer that they gave out during the event for the subsequent run, because the event actually was held, or the second one I guess was held on the 28th of February together with a Touhou event. So legitimately, when people made the Touhou comparisons, like the fact that you're seeing a Touhou and Blue Archive only event where like the event was split between just the 2 series, is it's starting to make it feel more and more real to me as well, to be honest. But yeah, this one actually took place in the building down in Tachikawa, where one of the previous videos that I did on the Vocaloid event, the Vocaloid Master, was actually held. The event itself wasn't too massive, although the expected the event is really just split between the Blue Archive segment and the Touhou, and they were just like facing off against each other since each one had their own ring there separately. The Blue Archive segment was still fairly smaller. I feel like that would be to be expected. I don't expect it to be as big big as Touhou, to be honest. I actually spent quite a fair bit of time at the Touhou segment as well, since I do actually enjoy both series a fair bit. But yeah, for this event as well, I ended up like just chilling and talking to a lot of the people there. I think the guy who actually has all 3 Nerus at like Bond 100 was at the event with like his Neru plush and his shirt here. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, basically he does this thing. In Japan now, they call this the core formation, where you set them here like this, and then you just walk around. You kind of just walk around like this. Like you have like a chest burster coming out of you or something, and you just like walk around an event with them like in the jacket, so that you can have them around while you like just lumber around like that. Yeah, for the most part, the event was, as expected, focused mostly on just Millenium alone, so there was quite a lot of cool stuff to see there. I didn't really buy much because of the fact that like by this point, most of my budget was already kind of ruined, because we were at the end of February. So by the time this event had happened, like you gotta understand, Blue Archive Fest had happened, the Asakusa Stamp Rally had happened, there were multiple Doujin events, there was Winter Comic Cat, like there were some like Mahōako like pop-up stores as well. I had basically run mostly out of money, so I was just mostly there to chill instead. But I did get some stuff both for Blue Archive as well as for Touhou, just a little bit. But yeah, suffice to say, the event itself was getting a decent number of people and a decent number of circles, so it was actually pretty cool to see. An event happening all the way to the western part of Tokyo, although I really wish that they would just like have it in a place that's more accessible. I'm starting to think my house is the problem more so than anything. Maybe it's time for me to move somewhere closer to all of these events. But yeah, you know, we've talked about like multiple events now, but in spite of all of that, that's not all. Like I mentioned before, like there's still a whole bunch of events that are happening going forward. Like you have one in Kawasaki for the Remedial Club that will be on the 5th of April. There's a seminar one that's happening on the 28th of June. The Ariel Squad one that's on the 9th of May. There's one for the Occult Research Club on the 31st of October. Like it's getting kind of crazy, the sheer number of events that are happening. So yeah, suffice to say, the only events have been increasing bit by bit as the year has gone on, cause I'm only finding out about more and more of these as the year goes by. I think there's one that got announced, like a Mari only event that's also happening. If you really want to keep track about all of these events, in case you want to plan a trip around it, there's apparently a guy on Twitter who has basically created a list with every single one of these events, basically like on a little like what looks like a mobile like notepad that's just all listed down there. If you want to check out and track all of those, you can actually use his Twitter, and I would recommend using it because of the fact that he also has all of the official events logged there as they are announced, so you really get a very good sense of every single thing related to Blue Archive if you're interested in like tracking everything that happens within Japan. But yeah, suffice to say, it's getting pretty crazy, the amount of events that the series has. I don't know, it would be interesting to like make a video at some point, maybe like analyzing how and why it feels like all of this, it's even getting this level of popularity within the doujin space within Japan, because it certainly is reaching levels that are pretty abnormal in the sense that like it's on a level that you don't see too often. Well, it may not be the biggest in any way, like even in the doujin space, it may not be the biggest thing to have ever happened, since you do have stuff like Touhou itself, for example, which is way more massive. But at the same time, we also see that like Blue Archive as a game is not as big as many of the other mobile games that are out there as well. So the fact that specifically this one has picked up more than many of the others in the doujin like content creation space within Japan is, to me, something that's very impressive. Truth be told, I don't know how much longer the momentum for all of this will carry on for, but the fact that we have reached 2026 and like there's basically events running almost every single month. No, I think there's one every single month at minimum, and not only within Tokyo, but you do have events in other prefectures as well, like in Osaka as well as Nagoya, Hiroshima, where have you not. It's getting to the point where it's actually just really bizarre but interesting to see as well, and to see what people are creating for those events. But yeah, that's it. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you all for watching, and I hope that this was an interesting look at all of the different events that are going on for like Blue Archive across, like, I don't even know whether to call it like the season, because like there certainly is a lot more that's like spreading into multiple seasons, and that's going to spread the rest of the year. If you're interested in all of that, I do recommend giving it more of a check out though, because there's just so much stuff to take note of that frankly it's getting really difficult for me to even want to go to all of the different doujin events for Blue Archive, because it's actually reaching the point where it's actually getting in the way of me being able to go to other different events to continue making the events for all of these other videos as well. So it's both amazing, and at the same time it's getting rough keep track of all of it. But that said, thank you as always to the people who help to support the channel and to all of you watching as well. Thanks to all of you guys and continue to make the content on this channel, even if not just the event videos, because I know everybody likes different stuff here. It does help with a lot of the other videos as well, especially the research for some of the bigger scale videos like the Saori video, for example. So thank you all once again, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care and bye bye.